POL 111. Introduction to Political Science. Study Session 1. Introduction. Politics is the process of making uniform decisions applying to all members of a group. It also involves the use of power by one person to affect the behavior of another person. In this study session, you will learn about political parties, the reconciliation perspective of political parties, the institutional viewpoint of it, the activity approach, the distribution school in political science, and the synthesis politics. An analysis of perspectives, defining politics. Politics is the process of making uniform decisions applying to all members of a group. It also involves the use of power by one person to affect the behavior of another person. The reconciliation perspective. The fact that people in society are of different views, religions, cultures, and values, and society is able to accommodate these differences led to the conception of politics via the reconciliation perspective. To many political scientists, disagreement and conflict are inevitable in society, but politics provides the framework, an avenue for reconciling these differences. P.B. Harris, crafting a reconciliation definition of politics, contended that one aspect of politics is that it tries to ensure that people can settle their differences. Political scientists consider how people institutionalize their disagreements, and this is a very important part of the subject. In much the same way, economists are most interested in scarcity. The ideal situation does not exist then. Although people do not essentially need institutions to settle their differences, they do normally tend to create some type of political institution such as parliament, court, or party in order to help them keep their conflict under control. The reconciliation perspective. A number of comments are spontaneously called for if you look at the above conception of politics. First and foremost, though we may agree that politics has something to do with conflict resolution, to claim that conflict resolution says all about politics is to blind one intellectual eye to other vital areas of politics. Secondly, the definition of politics in the above direction leaves the student with the task of rationalizing the causes of conflicts. Thirdly, the definition is unable to demonstrate whether total or near-total reconciliation of these conflicts would invariably lead to the total or near-total absence of politics from society. Finally, this definition does not show us how the institutions are able to solve the conflicts without victims of the conflict. However, whatever else may be said about the reconciliation perspective, it made two significant contributions to the development of a definition of politics. Firstly, it was able to emphasize conflict as inevitable in society. No doubt, conflict and its resolution have been the major preoccupation of political scientists over the years. Many other definitions of political science, though may not directly say something about conflict and its resolution, when analyzed boils down to it. Secondly, the definition also emphasized the institutional dimension of politics, though it greatly restricted these institutions to their reconciliation activity. This preoccupation with institutions was later to dominate definitions of politics, as we can see from the next viewpoint, the institutional viewpoint. The concern of political thinkers with various types of political institutions is not recent. Plato, Aristotle, Karl Marx, and a host of others said one thing or the other about political institutions and processes either directly or indirectly. This concern for political institutions partly resulted in the formulation of definitions of politics to reflect the concern for institutions. Furthermore, political institutions represent the most evident demonstration of politics and the political. A major emphasis of the institutional definitions of politics is their concern with government and decision-making. In this light, political scientist, Alfred de Grazia, contends that politics or political includes the events that happen around the decision-making centers of government. The institutional viewpoint. W.E.F. Ward also gave a similar definition when he contended that the study of politics tries to discover the general principles on which government can be carried out successfully. For A. Apadire, the study of politics deals with the state or political society, meaning by the term a people organized for law within a definite territory. Implicit in Apadire's definition is the study of political institutions or organizations. The conception of politics as basically concerned with institutions or government has attracted a number of criticisms over the years because of its narrow nature. In the opinion of Onoli, this kind of definition, however, does not tell us much about politics. It hides under the word govern. The crucial question becomes, what does it mean to govern? Is all governance politics? Both the president of the nation and the archbishop of a church is involved in governing men, the one in a state, the other in a church archdiocese. But are they both in politics? If so, how do we distinguish the affairs of state from the affairs of a church? The activity approach. The dissatisfaction with the definition of politics emphasized institution or government-led political scientists to search for alternative definitions. This search led political scientists to look for activities or behavior that could be said to be political and applied to a variety of institutions and processes. However, the activity emphasized ranged from power to authority and conflict. It is in this direction that Robert A. Dahl conceived of politics or the political system as any persistent pattern of human relationship that involves, to a significant extent, control, influence, power, or authority. In the same vein, William Bloom defined politics as a social process characterized by activity involving rivalry and cooperation in the exercise of power and culminating in the making of decisions for a group. Certainly, the activity approach represents an improvement in the institutional approach. However, in a bid to capture broadly what politics is all about, it falls into its problem. The approach became so broad that it made students search for politics or the political everywhere. Furthermore, it did not specify the kind of institution where politics is most likely to occur. The distribution school. Politics has been defined by some scholars based on its function in society. This group of definitions emphasizes the fact that politics or the political is concerned principally with how societal wealth is distributed. In each case, politics is viewed as an activity. It probably involves the exercise of power, but, importantly, it is an activity that serves a purpose, or purposes. Thus, Lasswell submitted that politics is essentially interested in who gets what, when and how. This conception of politics by Lasswell has not gone without criticism. In the view of O'Noley, there is nothing political about who gets what, when, and how. In the family, the same principle operates, as in the church, in the university, in a social club, or in a cultural organization. Where two or more men are gathered for a common purpose, there is always a question of who gets what, when, and how. Therefore, Lasswell's definition does not distinguish between a political situation and a non-political one. A closely related definition of Lasswell's was the one offered by David Easton. For Easton, politics is the authoritative allocation of values for a society. Easton's problem lies in his combination of high-sounding words like authoritative, allocation, and value, which destroyed the utility of his definition. However, his conception has been a reference point in political science because of his view of politics as a set of human interactions concerned primarily with the allocation or rationing out of scarce resources which are considered desirable. A synthesis. Politics is interested in the reconciliation of conflicts in society. Political institutions and processes are usually fashioned in such a way as to ameliorate, if not eradicate, potential sources of tension and antagonism in the society. Such institutions seek harmony in place of discord to enable society to realize the goal of development. Also, politics is concerned with the study of institutions and, most often than not, government. A major reason for this is the fact that government represents the most evident structural or institutional demonstration of politics. It is in this governmental structure or institution that conflicts are systematically resolved. It is also in this governmental institution that most political activities are directed. Finally, the government represents the instrument for the distribution and allocation of resources in any society. While it is accepted that political activities may take place in other areas of society, these political activities are not unmindful of government actions and as such, are directly or indirectly aimed at influencing the government. Furthermore, politics is an activity and thus the conception of politics as an activity is not misplaced. It is an activity not only because human beings are involved but also because it is interested in power and authority relationships in society. Finally, politics is also concerned with the distribution and allocation of resources in society. By and large, the discussion of the different perspectives above shows the interrelatedness of the different ways of defining politics. The differences only manifest as a result of individual writers' differences, and the dominant thinking at the time they wrote. A careful synthesis of the above dimensions of defining politics was submitted by Ian Wabuser and M. Mueller when they wrote that politics consist of all social interactions and dispositions which are directly or indirectly aimed at or actually succeed in obtaining binding decisions about who has desired resources, or who do not, and when and how these are obtained, in any enduring social system. Study Session 2. Approaches to the Study of Political Science. Introduction. The term approach is common to nearly all fields of study. If we move from the liberal arts to the social sciences and then to the natural sciences, one finds that the term is commonly used. The historian concerns himself with ways of knowing important events that took place in the past. In this study session, You will learn about approaches to the study of political science, the traditional approach, the historical approach, the legalistic approach, the institutional approach, and the behavioral approach. Approaches to the study of political science. In this light, the historian may utilize a variety of approaches ranging from simple transfer of information from elders to more rigorous methods of perusing through and analyzing information and materials left in various tourist centers. The sociologist also is interested in discovering the regularities in social behavior via different approaches. He may also use a variety of approaches ranging from simple observation of human behavior to a more rigorous method of empirical research. The natural scientist is also engaged in various methods of empirical research with a view to discovering scientific laws. Approaches to the study of political science. Furthermore, an approach can be evaluated based on the extent to which it distinguishes politics from other fields of study. While it must be accepted that there is nothing fundamentally wrong with political science borrowing approaches from other fields of study, the point must however be made that such approaches must be adequately readjusted to suit the distinctiveness of political science as a field of study. Finally, an approach to the study of politics must be such that has the capacity to study different aspects of the field of politics. Various approaches have been used to study political science over the years. In its early days, the traditional approach dominated the field of politics. The traditional approaches were preoccupied with the historical, legalistic, and institutional study of politics. Furthermore, an approach can be evaluated based on the extent to which it distinguishes politics from other fields of study. While it must be accepted that there is nothing fundamentally wrong with political science borrowing approaches from other fields of study, the point must however be made that such approaches must be adequately readjusted to suit the distinctiveness of political science as a field of study. The historical approach. Political science and history are two fields of study that have been closely related and studied over the years. In its early beginning, political science was looked upon as a historical discipline. This kind of thinking brought Richard Jensen to the conclusion that history is past politics and politics present history. The historical approach to political science is best presented by George H. Sabine. In his view, a political theory is always advanced in reference to a pretty specific situation, and therefore a reconstruction of the time, place, and circumstances in which it was produced is essential to understand it. The fact that a political theory is always rooted in a pretty specific situation does not mean that it does not have significance for future times. Great political theories excel both in analyses of a present situation and in their suggestions for other situations. Even though it is the outcome of a peculiar set of historical circumstances, it has significance for all times to come. It is exactly this universal character of political theory, which makes it respectable. The legalistic approach. The legalistic approach arose partly as a result of intellectual dissatisfaction with the historical approach. Though the historical approach provided political scientists with information on past political events, it did not clearly distinguish politics from history. The student of politics was left to go through volumes of books without actually demarcating the field of politics from other fields of study. The quest for the most distinguishing feature of politics led a group of scholars to emphasize the legal aspects of politics. This represents the intellectual origin of the legalistic approach. For scholars of the legalistic approach, the most distinguishing feature of politics is the study of laws and constitutions. This contention that tends to help in the demarcation of politics from other fields of study has been commended by many scholars. In the opinion of A. Isaac, some political scientists view the legalistic approach as an improvement over the historical approach because it makes a distinction between history and political science. The political scientist is now able to tell the historian what the two do not have in common. The institutional approach. The study of political science using the instrumentalities of both the historical and legalistic approaches did not satisfy some scholars. The major argument here was not that the study of politics is much more than a mere historical account of events or is it limited to the study of legal codes and constitutions. The need to remedy this deficiency led the third group of scholars to offer a third approach popularly called the institutional approach. In this light, the institutional approach can be regarded as an academic reaction to the historical and legalistic approaches. In the words of A. Isaac, as political scientists realized that there was more to politics than legal codes and constitutions, a shift of emphasis took place. There was talk about studying political realities, that is what politics actually is, not just its history or legal manifestation. The most obvious realities of politics are the political institutions, legislatures, executives, and courts receive the primary attention of the institutionalist. The behavioral approach. Intellectual dissatisfaction with the traditional approaches to political science led some scholars to emphasize what in their opinion constitutes the real substance of politics, and this is the study of the behavior of actors in the political system. This gave birth to the behavioral approach in political science. The behavioral approach or behavioralism has been defined variously by different scholars. According to Dahl, behavioralism can be regarded as a protest movement in political science associated with a number of political scientists, mainly Americans, who shared. In the opinion of David Truman, behavioral political science emphasizes two important things. They are first and foremost research that must be systematic, and secondly, emphasis must be placed on empirical methods. Apart from its emphasis on political behavior, the behavioral approach to the study of political science is based on a number of other assumptions, aims, and objectives. According to David Easton, behavioral political science is characterized by a number of assumptions, which include regularities, verification, techniques, quantification, values, systematization, pure science, and integration. Nevertheless, the behavioral approach has contributed a great deal to the development of political science as a field of study. It has made the study of political science much more rigorous, systematic, and scientific. It thus guides the explanation and prediction of events in political science. Post-behavioralism. Despite its popularity and attraction, the behavioral approach in political science did not only make disciples for itself, as it was making disciplines, it was also creating vehement oppositions in some areas. While it was generally accepted that the behavioral revolution attempted to draw political science into the realm of a more rigorous scientific study, some scholars stopped to question the basis and relevance of this drift. To this group of scholars, the attempt to make political science more scientific led to a reduction of its relevance in society. This argument formed the basis of the post-behavioral revolution in political science. To the post-behavioralists, therefore, in emphasizing the need to be empirical, to base all statements on observation, and in most cases quantification, the behavioral political scientist has too often focused his attention on trivial questions. Study Session 3. Political Science and Other Fields of Study. Introduction. A study of politics must at the onset elicit a lucid understanding of other fields of study, which are related to and important for the understanding of politics. Though the origin of political science is remote, a closer examination of the discipline would reveal that over the years it has been able to influence other fields of study just as it has also been influenced by other fields. Political Science and Other Fields of Study. The study of history and politics has for a long time maintained a close relationship. History, commonsensical, is the study of important events that took place in the past. Political scientists have found history very vital in their analysis of political events. It can thus be argued that history provides political science with its essential raw materials. On the other hand, history also gains a lot from political science. As Lord Acton aptly puts it, the science of politics is the one science that is deposited by the stream of history like the grains of gold in the sands of a river. Professor Seeley puts it well when he says that political science is the fruit of history and history is the root of political science. Despite these relationships, however, the point must be made that political science does not derive all its raw materials from history, as there are other fields, for example, economics, sociology, etc., that also supplies political science with materials. Political scientists usually selectively treat historical documents and facts with a view of selecting only those that are related to them. History can present us with a multitude of data, but it can be selectively treated and subdivided into political science, geography, economics, and many more fields of study. Political Science and Other Fields of Study. Political science is also closely related to the study of law. Political science, as has already been mentioned, is concerned partly with the reconciliation of differences and conflicts in society. According to A. Potteray, ethics is a branch of study which investigates the laws of morality and formulates rules of conduct. It deals with the rightness and wrongness of man's conducts, an ideal towards which man is working. The closeness of the relationship between political science and ethics is evident. A fourth major field of study that is also related to political science is economics. The closeness of the two fields of study has led to the study of political economy in major universities of the world. Economics as a field of study deals principally with scarcity, production, and distribution of goods and services. Inasmuch as politics also concerns itself with the question of who gets what, when, and how, and the authoritative allocation of values in a conflictual or cooperative system. It could almost be contended that politics is no more than applied economics. Furthermore, economic issues are most often than not also political issues. For example, the country's financial indebtedness is the concern of economists just as it is the concern of political scientists. Finally, just as the political ideas and institutions are influenced by the economic foundation of society, so also is the economic well-being of a society influenced by the political arrangement. Political science is also closely related to the study of sociology. First and foremost, the two fields of study are interested in the study of society through different areas of concentration. Secondly, the terms used and the concepts devised are often common to both disciplines and of considerable interest to both. Finally, the closeness of the two fields of study is demonstrated in the fact that early philosophers spoke in their works of sociology and politics at the same time. The affinity between the two fields is today demonstrated in a new subject, political sociology. Napoleon once pointed out that two of the basic components of the politics of every country are the land and the people. Very many conflicts have developed over the question of what is the ideal mixture of land and the people, especially when land which is fertile or rich is shared amongst people in inequitable or disproportionate ways. Political party. A conceptual analysis writing about political parties is not a novel enterprise. It is several decades since political scientists, once preoccupied with constitutional forms, ceased to neglect political parties. Yet scholars are not agreed as to how to define political parties. The discipline of political science is flooded with a variety of definitions of the term political party. This is because of a number of reasons. A major reason for the existence of a variety of definitions of the term political party, however, is the fact that political parties have been identified as possessing a variety of characteristics. According to R.M. Ishvar, a party is defined in a traditional way as an association organized in support of some principle or policy, which by constitutional means it endeavors to make the determinant of government. Furthermore, the existence of other organizations like interest groups that is closely related to political parties tends to complicate the definition of political parties. The task before the political scientist in this respect is not just that of defining political party as a term but also that of distinguishing it from other groups that are closely related to it. Finally, the existence of different party systems and the variety of ways in which political parties operate in these systems make a definition of the term problematic. We are therefore faced with the problem of offering a definition that could be adopted for these various systems. A look at various definitions of the term political party would help to demonstrate how scholars have deliberately attempted to offer definitions to cope with these problems. According to R.M. Ishvar, a party is defined in a traditional way as an association organized in support of some principle or policy, which by constitutional means it endeavors to make the determinant of government. This definition was greatly explained by W. N. Chambers, who outlined the characteristics of a political party by contending that modern parties are characterized by a relatively durable or regularized relation between leaders and followers, by continuing procedures for performing the key functions of selecting candidates and managing a public business, by the range, density and stability of their support, and by a distinguishable set of perspectives with emotional overtones. According to J. Loppel-Ombers and M. Wiener, a political party is a formal organization whose self-conscious, primary purpose is to place and maintain in public office persons who will control, alone or in the coalition, the machinery of government. The later point of this definition coincides with Joseph Schumpeter's conception of a political party, which is first and foremost aimed at prevailing over others in order to get into power or to stay in it. From all the definitions given above, a political party can be described in terms of the purpose for which it is organized, the character of its membership, its structure, or the functions it performs. Study Session 4, Political Party and its Functions, A Pragmatic Viewpoint, Introduction. The function a political party performs in any political system has been a subject of concern to political scientists. Though it is generally agreed that political parties are vehicles for political elites to acquire political power, the views have been expressed in many works that the functions of political parties are much more than that. In this study session, you will learn about political parties and their function. The function a political party performs in any political system has been a subject of concern to political scientists. Though it is generally agreed that political parties are vehicles for political elites to acquire political power, the views have been expressed in many works that the functions of political parties are much more than that. Political party. The type of party system and the power configuration between political parties must be properly assessed for a system to qualify for the term democracy. Furthermore, a major problem in stating the functions of political parties is the fact that on one hand, political parties perform some functions that are evident and easily identifiable, while on the other hand, it also performs some functions that are remote and latent. The task of empirical analysis becomes even more arduous when we try to isolate and treat separately the latent and manifest functions of a party, such as the difference between recruiting candidates, manifest, and encouraging political identity and political legitimacy. Functions of political parties. Nevertheless, a number of functions of political parties can be identified. These include 1. The recruitment function. 2. The aggregation function. 3. The articulation function. 4. The unifying function. 5. The linkage function. Functions of political parties. 1. The recruitment function. Political parties perform what most people regard today as their recruitment function. By the above, we mean that political parties are the major source of selecting leaders for society. This process of selection or recruitment begins when the political elite joins the political party until such an elite gains political power. In the words of Onoli, because the party that wins an election also forms the government, the parties in modern states have become the main source of recruitment of people into political and governmental leadership positions. Thus, political parties are the basic schools for most government leaders. 2. The aggregation function. Another major function of political parties is that of the aggregation of interests. Every society is made up of many individuals and groups with seemingly irreconcilable interests or goals. If these individuals and groups are allowed to present their demands to the political system separately, the crisis would occur and the system could collapse. Political parties, therefore, function to bring interests together. They prevent the existence of unorganized interests by coordinating people and groups of similar views and interests. 3. The articulation function. Closely related to the above functions of interests aggregation is the articulation function. Once a political party has succeeded in bringing together a large number of persons and groups of similar interest, they now give meaning to their existence by the formulation of a party program fondly called Party Manifesto. The Party Manifesto represents what the party stands for just as it shows the interests that were aggregated. The Party Manifesto is usually vigorously publicized by the party in a conscious bid to get more supporters. In this process, the political party gives meaning and publicity to the people's interests and aspirations, and it is known as interest articulation. 4. The unifying function. Furthermore, political parties also perform a unifying function. Every society is made up of individuals and groups with varying interests and aspirations. These interests and aspirations most often than not are conflictual in nature, and the resolution of these conflicts constitutes an important issue if society must make progress. Political parties represent an important mechanism for moderating conflicts in society. According to Alan R. Ball, one of the most important functions of political parties is that of uniting, simplifying and stabilizing the political process. Political parties tend to provide the highest common denominator. They do not divide in spite of the claims of advocates of one-party or coalitional governments. They unite. Parties bring together sectional interests, overcome geographical distances and provide coherence to sometimes divisive government structures. 5. The linkage function. Finally, political parties also perform a linkage function in the political system. They provide a vital link between the people and the government. According to Alan R. Ball, political parties provide a link between the government and the people. They seek to educate, instruct and activate the electorate. They use the mass media and local organizations to maintain contacts with the relatively politically inactive and lead them to the awareness and acceptance of various policies. They seek to mobilize the population. These activities may be restricted to the election period, with various methods of increasing parties' vote, but they may extend far beyond electoral propaganda, and the party seeks to mobilize support by channeling supporters of non-political activities. Study Session 5. The Origin of the State. Introduction. The origin of the state, among others, argues that the state is an institution or an establishment brought into being by God. The state of nature was characterized by the clear absence of any set of rules that guided human actions and behaviors. Nature was regarded as the only source of prescribed rules and regulations. However, it was not practically possible for this to continue into eternity. Social contract theory. The term social contract commonsensically denotes an agreement reached by a group of humans. It, Therefore, proceeds with the first assumption that men produce the state from an agreement reached amongst themselves. It contends that from the very beginning men lived in a stateless social system. This stateless social system was characterized by the visible absence of any form of governmental organization. The absence of this made the system to be popularly referred to as the state of nature. Though the social contract theorists are agreed on the issue that the state is a product of an agreement, they, however, differ on the way and manner the so-called agreement was struck. The views of Hobbes, Locke, and Rousseau will be examined in this wise. In the opinion of Hobbes, the state of nature was solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short because of man's inhumanity to man. He argues that man is naturally and essentially selfish. Man would under any circumstances want to achieve his own desires, wishes, and aspirations even at the peril of his fellow man. In this arena of competitive demands and aspirations, and the conspicuous lack of government, man was now left at the mercy of his fellow man. Life became nasty and poor. The state for Hobbes was thus formed by a man that wanted to escape from these negative aspects of the state of nature. As already recorded by Idahosa and Odergyle, the only way to peace is for men to give up some of their natural rights as are inconsistent with living in peace. Supreme coercive power is instituted. A state is thus formed. Hobbes bases an absolute state on free contract and consent. The opinion of Hobbes is quite different from that submitted by John Locke. For John Locke, the state of nature was not one of war but one in which there was absolute peace. Men under this state were free and equal. For Locke, the absence of government does not mean the absence of any form of laws. For him, in the state of nature, men were guided by the law of common sense. Rousseau on his own part disagrees with the submission of Hobbes that man is naturally selfish. For him, man is essentially good and sympathetic. He agrees with the submission of Locke on the state of war. He also agrees with Locke on how the state was formed but submits that the ultimate goal of the state is to provide the greatest happiness for the greatest number. However, Rousseau distinguishes between the government and the sovereign, or what he calls the general will. For him, government is not part of the contract as its functions are only to execute the laws already made up the general will. The general will can only be made by an assembly of these people. According to Idahosa and Odergyle, Rousseau's theory served as the basis for democracy and the justification of revolution against arbitrary rule. However, the social contract theory is a good reference point if one must properly conceptualize the purpose of government even in modern times. It underscores the fact that government should be based on the consent of the ruled and not the ruler. Modern democracy has benefited a lot from this theory. The theory of divine origin. The divine theory on the origin of the state among others argues that the state is an institution or an establishment brought into being by God. Furthermore, they argue that rulers are divinely appointed and accountable only to God. This explains why at times the theory is referred to by some scholars as to the theory of the divine right of kings. A major proponent of this theory is Filmer. According to this scholar, Adam was the first king ordained by God, and all other kings in ancient and modern times are his descendants. For this scholar, there was a time in which the state of nature from a state. Rather they approached the Almighty God who now gave them Manu as king to rule over them and also brought sanity to their troubled society. To him, the king is a representative from God on earth and he also expresses the will of God for men. The above theory is an attempt to turn a purely academic issue into a religious one. Furthermore, an attempt to accept a theory of this nature would lead to nothing but drift towards authoritarianism, as the kings cannot be questioned by men since they are the representatives of God. It can also be argued that the theory appeals more to faith rather than reason. The theory is also historical, as we cannot find in any practically recorded history where men approached God for a king. God himself is even seen as invisible, and so the question of approaching him is out of the issue totally. Finally, the fact that the ruler/king is accountable only to God as argued by this theory makes the theory greatly irrelevant in the context of modern democracies. The theory of force. The force theory on the origin of the state argues that the state is not a product of the contract but the product of the stronger subjugating the weaker. The institution of the state for this theory is an avenue for the stronger force legitimizing its control over the weaker forces. The acquisition of private property led to a state of war, and in this state, the stronger forces destroyed the weaker one and established the state. This argument has been greatly sponsored by Hume and Jenks. In the opinion of Hume, it is probably that the rule of one man over many others began during a state of war. This view was also given expression to by Karl Marx, who argued that the executive of the modern state is but a committee for the management of the common affairs of the bourgeoisie. History is also replete with stories of migration and conquest and the consequent establishment or expansion of the state system. The evolutionary theory. The evolutionary theory can be regarded as the most popular and widely accepted theory of all the theories on the evolution of the state. The theory simply argues that the state is a product of natural and gradual evolution. It argues also that the state came into existence by a combination of several factors including kingship, religion, war, and political consciousness. In the view of a scholar like Wilson, for example, government or the state began from the family unit and the father was the head. The father established rules and regulations, coordinated and directed the affairs and activities of other members. He was the known ruler and with whom was authority. The family grew into an extended family, then into clans, villages, and kingdoms.